down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
Ladies and gentlemen, yep, boys and girls, man, this is the best part of doing the Savvy Radio Show, Savvy Podcast, whatever you want to call it. It's something for somebody somewhere that you're going to be inspired today, because I only bring on the people that inspire people. And this gentleman that I'm about to introduce has inspired me, not only that we became fast friends. It sucks that he lives in Ohio, which is kind of cool because I definitely have a reason to go there every year on top of Ohio RIA. But just his heart, his servanthood, the way he handles transactions just inspires me. So I met, just to give you some background story, I met Chad Harris. Yep. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Hey, thank you.
A couple of years ago, he saw me speak. We connected. And then he just had this inspiring story. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. He's just give you some perspective. His parents were full-time real estate investors or investors themselves. Fascinating. Another fascination, started with nothing and got to 50 units pretty remarkably. And he's real nonchalant about stuff. He's like, I get all excited. He's like, yeah. I go, how many units? Oh, I'm over 50. So, yeah, I raise private. You raise private money? Yeah, on all my transactions. I'm like, what? So, folks, you ladies and gentlemen, peeps around the world, you're about to get to know someone that has a jack of skills. And so we'll dig deep into those. But let's start off with your family. So give us where'd you grow up? Where were you born? We'll get into your wife, superstar Kara, but you went to Kenya. You lived there. You've lived. Where else have you lived? Where were you born? And tell us about your parents.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that introduction, Stephen. I was born in Dayton, Ohio, grew up in Dayton, Ohio. My parents were teachers, and my father started buying real estate around the time that I was born. And he slowly grew his holdings, and then after about 15 years, he quit teaching and was a full-time investor from then on.
So you grew up in this environment. That's all you knew? So is it hard work that he teach you? Did he teach you the economics behind it?
Well, he definitely taught hard work, instilled work ethic. But he also, I remember a lot of lessons along the way. I remember when I was young, he had me in the driveway for some reason telling me about how to buy houses without using any of your own money. And
wow,
I think I was probably 8 or 10, and it was completely over my head. But he always instilled in me that anything was possible. I never really saw too many limits with that. And I kind of took for granted kind of the lifestyle he was able to get as an entrepreneur. So he worked hard, but he also took time off. We always took long vacations. Went to Florida for a couple weeks, went out west for a month, different times. And so a lot of those things I just took for granted. So
you just thought it was just natural?
Yeah. I didn't think there was any other way. I learned differently when I became an adult and got my own job. But yeah, growing up, that's what I knew.
So I got so many questions. One, how did your dad learn about it?
He always had a fascination with it because his grandmother had a couple rentals. So when he was a kid, he would go with his father to collect rent once a month. And he always just was fascinated with the idea of receiving money every month without doing anything. And so I don't know how he really got started. He grew up with nothing and always hustled and worked hard, and he always had many jobs, was always selling things on the side. And he was always going to different conferences, learning new ideas. So I'm not sure what the initial spark was for that first house, but even when I was young, I remember him going to conferences with Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar.
Wow.
He was president of the local RIA. He was always reading books, always learning new ideas.
So, we'll touch on this in a minute, but you mentioned something about no limits. What do you mean by no limits? No limits on your capacity of what you could do, no limits on economics. What do you mean by no limits?
I meant, well, so many times when I talk to people who want to get into investing, they see many obstacles. They don't have money. They don't have experience. They see all these things they have to overcome. And I always just took from my father that anybody could do it. If you didn't have money, there was a way to buy houses. If you weren't experienced, you could buy houses. That it was more just a matter of determination than anything else. So he definitely blessed me in that regard.
So just the optimism of free market, free capitalism, and just he figured out that there's a way to get. And it's interesting. I can't wait to meet your dad one day, because that's how I think today. I'm like, I can lose it all, and I came from nothing. I created nothing. Why can't I not do that again and again and again? So there's like, I feel free. Does that translate to your dad? Did he feel free about? I mean, obviously he worked really hard. Was that his mentality, that it was just opportunity was everywhere?
Yeah, definitely. And his motivation was freedom.
Mm.
He didn't grow up with money, and he always wanted to make money. He was always working at that. But once he had his own business, what really excited him was that he made his own schedule. Nobody told him what to do. His success was in his hands. It wasn't up to somebody else. That really his life was what he made of it.
Cool. I mean, I'm just inspired just to hear you, and you're so laid back. It's so funny because we spend a lot of time together. And so I have like 1,000 burning questions. So get ready, because I'm about to fire them off.
I'm ready.
And you're like, my dad is so great. So why did you go get a job, or why did you go to college? Did they instill that in you? Did they give you that an opportunity? Like, did they push that upon you? Did they suggest it? Like, did he walk you through this? Did he show you a HUD? Come on. I got 1,000 questions.
Okay. Yeah, I've thought about that too. I always worked on the rentals. But I didn't know that much about the investing side. When I was young, he was buying a lot. By the time I was in high school getting ready for college, he had pretty much built his holdings, and he was more into the managing and the systems and things like that. So it was always just assumed I would go to college. I never really thought about it. I went to college. I had an interest in real estate. I thought I would always buy houses. I mean, I thought it was simple. I'd just buy a few houses and let the tenants pay them off. And by the time I retired, they'd be paid off. I'd have extra money for retirement.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So what'd you go to school for?
I went to school for education.
As like a teacher?
I should say I went to school to be an engineer because I was good at math. And then after a year of that, I realized that would be misery for me and my personality. So I switched to literature and education because that's what I enjoyed.
Cool.
So I graduated and was a high school English teacher here in Ohio, and taught
I did not know
freshmen and
that.
seniors.
So where'd your wife come into play here? And you also moved out of state and twice. So let's get into that. So you became a teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I became a teacher. I met Kara. We worked during our summers in college down in Virginia for the Appalachia Service Project. And we both worked there, met during our summers in college. So we dated in college. I graduated, started teaching. And we both just loved to travel.
Was she from Ohio as well?
Yeah, she's from Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
not too far. And so we had always said that someday we'd move out west, someday we'd move overseas. We just, loved adventure. And so I taught 2 years in Ohio, then she graduated, taught a year in Ohio, and we decided to just move to Oregon, just for
Why?
the adventure of it.
Why Oregon?
I'd been most other places, and I had a college roommate that said Oregon was beautiful. So we went for it. I don't know. There really isn't anything else other than that.
I love how
we moved to Bend,
I
Oregon.
love how the Lord is a funny personality. Like, I just changed my whole life because my roommate said it was beautiful. That's awesome. So you live there? How long do you live there?
We lived there 2 years. It was amazing because Oregon pays substitute teachers very well, or they did then. So we had a great lifestyle. We were substitute teachers. We really didn't have much responsibility. We traveled all over the West, traveled cross country multiple times, would backpack. It was great.
Super
It was a lot
cool.
of fun.
What a great start of a marriage.
Yeah, it was
Just
good.
to have the freedom and the gorgeous backdrop, and then, no kids at the time, and you didn't really need much. So where'd you pick in Oregon, like Portland, or where'd you?
No, we went to Bend. Bend is just over the Cascades from the valley.
Cool.
So
I know that I see
like
that inside of you, that you're adventurous. It's interesting to see, like, my wife is somewhat kind of adventurous, and then, I'm kind of city, but I'm trying to be adventurous, and you are full on adventurous. Like, it's cool to see people with their own passions. So you're in Oregon. Where'd you move from there?
From there, we got our teaching license, transferred to Wyoming or Montana. We were going to move to Montana, but that was during really when the housing market started to fall apart in the Midwest. That was 2003.
Yeah.
And so my parents were having problems with their business, and we knew we were going to start working to move overseas. And so we offered to move back to Ohio, help my parents with their real estate business,
Wow.
and then prepare to go overseas. So we all thought it would be a short-term thing, but the housing market slump was a much bigger slump than anybody realized, and we ended up preparing to move to Kenya full time, and so that was a much bigger transition, and took much longer to prepare for that. So we ended up living in Dayton for 5 years, I think, there preparing to go to Kenya.
What was your desire or draw to go to Kenya?
We felt like we were both teachers. Kara was an elementary school teacher, special ed teacher, and we had always thought we would move overseas, and we thought we would move overseas as teachers. But then just our spiritual walk at the time, we were saved when we were in Oregon, and
Cool.
we came to feel that we needed to go over as missionaries. And so when we were in Ohio, we interviewed different sending agencies. We went to Indiana, Kentucky, Florida, interviewed different agencies to see what work they were doing. And when we met with the group in Indiana, we just felt like that's where we were supposed to go. So,
So that's kind of like an interviewing process. See if you can fit their mold, and they would help you raise enough money to sustain yourself and then follow kind of a missionary type workload.
They helped us with what to do to prepare to go. And our sending agency had teams, so we were joining a team of other people working in the field. They helped with education on how to raise money. they didn't really help a lot with the raising of the money. That was our work or our task. So
Not easy.
No, it wasn't easy. I was really bad at it at first. We had to raise, everything combined for our 4-year term. It was close to $500,000. And
so you had to commit to this organization to serve as missionaries. And by the way, you got to raise your own capital.
Yeah.
Or lifestyle, food and room and board.
Yeah, we had to raise all the money for the work.
And so you had to raise, let's just say $500,000, $500,000 before you left.
Yeah, we had to raise commitments for that $500,000 before we left. It was maybe $100,000 up front, and then monthly commitments.
Wow,
that totaled $500,000 for those 5 years.
Was that stressful?
It was really stressful because I didn't know what I was doing, and I wasn't good at it. Whenever you do something you're not good at or you don't feel successful at.
You don't remind me of a slick salesman.
No.
I know it's like pulling teeth to get you to laugh over here. So, wow. So you're out of your comfort zone. You accept Jesus later in life while in Oregon, while you're just gallivanting through mountains. You see a need for your parents who you feel obligated. You come back to prepare, and then you're preparing for missionary lifestyle, which is probably the worst in the world. By the way, you got to raise money, which is very uncomfortable. So you're telling me that you had to stand in front of a church and say, hey, I'm called to go to Kenya to teach English and to share the gospel. By the way, I need $20 a month. Right? Am I getting it right?
Yep, that's it.
And then
usually it was churches we didn't know anybody at. So I was doing cold calls to churches, trying to find any kind of connection.
So this is why you're a real estate guru superstar.
Was it, huh?
Dude, it's funny because I'm going back to my old ways. Like, how did I get here? And I'm reading a bunch of old sales books, like Dale Carnegie stuff, Dale Carnegie referred books. And I'm like, it takes that old grit of not knowing what's going to happen or where you're going, but you know that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And you're learning skills that the Lord planted in you so you could be successful in this industry. Just you being a teacher, because I know that you're coming out with some really good classes, and that's why I want to introduce everyone to Chad Harris, because he's got this passion to teach people. Obviously, I didn't know that you were a full-on teacher about vision and about goals and dreams, and of course, you've had the society success of over 50 units, and your wife was retired, back in 2013. You got 3 children, right? Is that right? 3 children?
Got 4 children.
4. And, I remember when I first met you and I was like, yeah, I'm Mr. Savvy. Hi, how are you? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm cool. I know how to raise money. You're like, I already do that. I'm like, seriously? You're like, yeah, I do private money. I don't know what I'm doing, but I raise a lot of private money. And I'm like, it was just cool because you just taught yourself how to raise private money. Like I'm assuming you took these similar skills that you learned, back in 2005, 6, 7, 8. I mean, you lived there for 4 years in Kenya.
Yeah, completely. So when I was trying to raise money for the ministry, it was really hard, and I wasn't doing that well at it. Really, I was doing a lot of things incorrectly. So I was presenting it like a need. I was almost begging, or felt like I was begging for money.
Yeah.
And I was doing a lot of things wrong. And we ended up getting to the field, and we raised the money, through a lot of effort and just being blessed for the effort. And then while we were there, I set up another child sponsorship ministry, and we had to come home and raise, a lot of money for that as well. It was close to the same amount of money.
Mm.
And in that process, I realized that there wasn't any reason for me to beg for money, that people were all over the US wanting to be involved in ministry overseas, and I was just giving them that opportunity.
Hmm.
And
Good.
so when I came back just for a couple weeks to raise that money, and I raised it all very quickly in a couple weeks. And I did similar thing when I started real estate, and it really wasn't any great plan. It was just how life worked out. When we knew we were going to stay back in the States after our 4 years in Kenya, I just started telling everybody that we were buying real estate and that's what we were going to do. And, presenting the opportunities, people were excited about it. I don't know what it is about real estate, but people want to invest in it. There's a lot of people that want to invest in it, but they don't really know how. So I just kept pitching the opportunity, telling people what I was doing, similar to the ministry, and started getting people who said they wanted to invest, and it worked. So,
One thing that I think you just casually slid over, I think is very powerful, that people really want to invest. People really want to be a part of something and get a return. And I think that's the train of thinking that I do when I'm prospecting for private money, or just having a casual conversation with anyone, like, hey, I think I have found something that could help you live your dreams or get to your goals. And I have that goal and dream as well, to live my goal and my dream. And you're like, you said it real casually, but it's like, I think a very powerful perspective that we're all looking to invest in something. Right? Is that what you said? Something?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And
maybe it's just like I notice, because I'm an entrepreneur, I notice that parents invest a lot of money and time in their children, which is a great thing. Like, I went to this place over the weekend called Bubba's Play Center. Bad name. And that's where my daughter had her Bubba's Play Center. Oh, God. Where she had her birthday party, which was $250 too much. I'm like, dude, people pay money for their children. People want to invest in something that they believe in. And if you just take that perspective and apply it to real estate, look, you can provide for your family through real estate, either through buying properties on your own or working with a skilled real estate investor to loan them money, and you can get a return, or AKA invest and get a return for that. Very powerful. All right. So good perspective. Put that in your next class. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world, my man is coming out with this leadership class. I saw it the other day. I'm going to plug that right now. So we're going to figure this out, Chad and I. We're either going to do this on a webinar, or he's going to fly to Oklahoma City, or we're going to figure it out. But if you have any if you've already been impacted by Chad already, we're not even done. We're halfway through the episode here. Let me know, let Chad know, reach out to us, and we'll figure out what's the best medium to get this material in your hand. Because, Chad, let's pause right there. We'll stay in Kenya. Okay. And then we'll get back to Kenya here in a minute. But where did this vision, you have this burning desire to teach on vision. Where did that come from? Was that in your travels in Kenya? Was that at a young age?
I'm always big picture oriented, right? I always want to know why I'm doing something or how it fits in the big picture. And so I'm just naturally built that way, or geared that way. But I noticed through my work in Kenya and when I started my business that really constantly casting vision is what made it successful. So when I was in Kenya, I was working with the group, and great people. They don't take on new ideas very quickly. As an American, we like new ideas and we like change. And the culture there is a little more resistant to change, and they like tradition. And so one of the big hurdles was getting them to accept this new program and to want to do it or want to accept it. And so I traveled around and I did these vision seminars, is what we called it. And we would cast the vision for, all these problems that they saw, how our program would help address those problems. And it was really exciting when you cast that vision and you have them think through the process of how their life could change, how their community could change. Suddenly they were on fire. They knew they could suddenly see what they wanted to work towards and how the program could get them there. And it was similar when I started my real estate business. From day one, I always hired contractors to work with me when I was working on the properties. And every Monday we would meet and I would cast vision. We're going to help families by providing better housing for them. We're going to improve communities by fixing up these houses that have been empty for years. And I feel like that really kind of unified all of us and really made a huge difference in the early growth of the business. So I'm just passionate about it. I know that it helps people focus. It helps give them motivation and direction, and really solves a lot of the problems with starting a business or getting through that plateau in a business.
That's awesome. So that's just been a desire for you. You found the key that has worked for you, that keeps you on point, that you look at this vision. And, it's interesting today. I hired somebody and I have all these tools, Trello and, Google Tasks. And then I was like, I just opened up a white piece of paper and I said, okay, listen, sometimes you just have to write out where we're at and where we want to go.
Yeah.
Key points that are important to us at this moment. These are the only things that we're going to focus on. This is the vision. This is the goal. And I just felt freed in that. And so you're taking that to a bigger level. So now, what made you come back to the States? And apparently you got sick at this time, right? You lived there for 4 years and you served. What happened on your way back?
Yeah, we lived there for 4 years. We came back for a year to report to all our supporters and kind of decide what we were going to do next. So the work I had done there, I had trained people to take it over. So there wasn't really a reason for me to go back and do the same job. So I was really deciding if we would move to Nairobi or what our next step would be. And when we came back to the States, I had been sick a lot in Kenya. We lived out in a rural setting, and for whatever reason, I was getting sick a lot. And then when we came back, I was really sick. No doctors really knew what was wrong with me. And you don't want to go into all the details with that, but yeah, it was just pretty much out of commission for large stretches of time. And that changes your perspective when gives you a lot of thoughts of insecurity. You're not sure what's going to happen next. And then our son was born about midway through our furlough. Our youngest son, his name's Bo, and he was born and he had some health issues, and he ended up having to have a trach tube put in, and we couldn't fly, and he needed a lot of medical attention. And so we knew then we were going to stay. And at that point, there weren't teaching jobs, and I didn't want to move away from family again to work at a church. I kind of wanted my kids to know my parents and Kara's parents and just be around family. So we decided we were going to do real estate full time. And that was it. There was no debate.
No
we
going
just
back.
knew that's what we were going to do.
So then you just, again, I'm assuming you created a vision?
Sadly, no. No. When I started, I was just trying to survive, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people have been there.
Mm-hmm.
We knew our job was going to end. I didn't have a place to live at the end of that. I didn't have a job lined up.
Yeah, like
So,
church, like you had 4 years in another country. Like what resume do you have? I'm a missionary. I'm
right. Yeah.
broke.
There's no resume.
I'm broke. I have no money.
Yeah. So somehow, with our W-2 from mission work, we were able to get a bank loan for a
Wow.
house. So I bought a foreclosure and we moved into the house. And 2 weeks later, my job ended and I was a full-time investor. And so really there wasn't much plan. It was just I had a couple rentals already that were paid off. And I would tell people I knew about it, what I was doing, and tell them how they could invest with me. And I would refinance those first rentals, give them a first mortgage, and use that money to buy another rental.
So the ones
And
that you already had debt free, you kind of just circled them back out.
right, I just kept when I would put a first mortgage on a house I already owned, then I would buy another house all cash and just repeat that process over and over. And I mean, it was just that system for probably the first 25 or so.
Now, tell me about what in early growth, you followed a financial business model, the BRRR model. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's just I don't know if it was named that back then, but yeah, it's just the model of buying all cash, um, and then renovating it, renting it, and refinancing it. So that's the BRRR. Um, so when I started, there were foreclosures everywhere, and you could get cheap houses on the MLS or inexpensive houses on the MLS. And so since I had cash from investors, I could buy those houses. I renovated them pretty much in the early days myself and just with guys I had hired to work with me. And then with that renovation, the value goes up
Hmm.
and we would rent it and then refinance it on that higher value. So usually we got more from the refinance than we put into it with the purchase and the rehab. So we would have some money to live on and some money for the next house.
And then during that process, was Kara, like, I know she homeschooled your kids. Did she partake in the real estate empire?
No, she homeschooled her kids, and Bo needed a lot of attention, and she focused on them.
Okay,
And we
cool.
joke about how in the early days when we would buy a new house, everybody'd be all excited, and she'd bring the kids by when I was working there. And then after a while, she just lost track and kind of gave up, and and that was it. Now she knows some of the houses by name. That's about it.
So
So.
you said that you were working on them. That's what your earlier growth. You actually did the handyman stuff, the painting and the trim carpentry. Are you handy?
Yeah, since I always worked on my parents' rentals, I knew how to do about just about anything.
Okay, so that's a good
Uh,
foundation.
yeah, so it made it easy to start. It made it easy to hire people. I wasn't used to hiring contractors, but since I was working with them, um, it made that a lot simpler. So that wasn't scalable. So eventually, I had to
Yeah,
learn
what
how to
was
hire.
that's my big question for you. I mean, you're over 50 units now. When did you decide to scale? What was that defining moment where you're like, I can't paint and do everything? Like what was going through your mind and when did that happen?
I think it was somewhere in the 20s. I was I was having trouble raising more private money. And I think it was pretty much, it was just my mentality. I was starting to get worn out because I always had to get that next investor for the next house.
Mhm.
And so I was starting to revert back to like the support raising techniques that didn't work, where I sounded needy and I felt like I had to get the money. And I just I was starting to get frustrated with it. And then I hired some contractors who worked independently, and they started working well, and I had more time to focus on finding good deals, and I switched over to some creative finance, and it was just kind of a natural progression.
You were just tired of it, tired of
Yeah,
doing all the work.
yeah, it's not. I don't know if this makes sense, but it's not the work I really enjoyed.
Sure.
Like, I was doing it to get by, and I knew how to do it, but what really excites me is putting together the deal and building a system, and kind of the numbers and the financing and helping investors. That's what really sparks me or energizes me. So
Sure.
that's what I always wanted to try to work towards, of spending more time doing that.
So you got into creative financing because of out of a need or as out of a desire?
It was well, I guess I don't know. It was both. I guess I probably could have kept raising private money if I would have kept at it, but I was just tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I started trying the creative finance, and that worked. And so I started buying houses on land contract and subject to, and that worked for a stretch, and then that was enjoyable and exciting. And then about 2 years ago, I went back to private money again. So I was really up for whatever would get me further.
It's cool. I love your progression because I see your timeline here. First of all, folks, this guy's a real teacher because I'm like, here's my talking points. I'm like, all the years and the people that I've interviewed, I'm like, when you sent me this email, I was like, I'm going to do it exactly like this. So, Chad, you can die tonight and know that you've impacted the Stephen VanCauwenbergh world of something.
All right, there we go.
But I can see the growth. Like, it's, you're articulating it. You just have like 2 bullet points in here, started building systems. And then I can see where I came in later when you hit 145 units. But I can see, knowing your personality, you're like, we're all like this. We get into like the comfort zone, and then we forget of what's really going on, and then we dive into creative finance, and then you're kind of going back into private money a little bit now, right? Is that where you're at right now a little bit?
Yeah, now I've been back in private money for at least a year. It seemed like as the market got hotter and hotter, there weren't as many people really willing to do creative finance. And I don't know if that's true of the market or just what I was seeing at the time. So I went back to private money. And so now the deals I've been buying are all private money. And I switched also, instead of refinancing properties I already owned to buy the new, I just started buying new properties with the private money and giving them a note on the purchased property. So that's been working out really well.
How did you learn? I mean, subject twos is not for the faint at heart. And there's another point I need to say, another nugget, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that this dude has never had any bank funding. This has all been bootstrapped from the start until now. How did you learn this stuff? Where did it come from?
Really, it was ever since I got interested in it. I just read books and studied and listened to podcasts and networked with other investors, read your books, met you, talked to you. I was just constantly trying to learn.
Just like your dad.
Yeah, exactly. It was a good model.
Well, I hope that I'm like that with my son. Like tonight, I mean, your boys are. What's your kids?
My oldest is 13, and
they're all boys, right?
3 boys and a girl.
I forget this 4th one. The only photos that I see are the boys all dressed up in camo.
Yeah,
which is super cool. You're the man's man. But what I do now is at night, I'm on my knees, like they have to do homework, and so I bring my book next to them and read with them. They don't know what I'm reading, but I hope and pray that me just being present with them with a book in my hand. I used to read out of my Kindle, and I'm like, they think I'm probably on my phone. So I started this last 6 months just really getting a tangible book in their face with a pen and reading.
It's awesome.
So I obviously it translated to you because that's my biggest fear. It's like, how did I get there's so many defining moments in this podcast. Like, what gave you this hunger? Yeah, you had a dad, and people are like, well, I didn't have a dad. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't have a dad. Okay. And I would say Chad and I are a lot alike in the way we approach things, the way we think. And, he has this burning desire. How do you turn on the burning desire? I can see the defining moments when you got to 45 units. You're like, what the F? You finally hired a property manager assistant. And I remember that transition in your life. And you felt freed. And it's not easy, though, right? Because there's still headaches to manage people.
Right. It's still a process. It's always work.
Well, it's really cool. I am speaking. I met with Vina yesterday, and I am totally talking about this exact subject. Like, how did I hire this person? How did I train this person? And how do I make this passive? Like, for real? Like, how do you own a property management machine that just runs? And it starts slow. Like, and I love your notes. Finally hired an assistant for property management. What went there? Like, and I know that I've encouraged you in this, and I'm not looking for a plug for myself. What was the defining moment where you were like, okay, I'm going to pay for this person? Was it a money situation? Was it out of like, I can't handle this anymore? Was Kara pissed off? Like, what pushed you? Was it, before you didn't enjoy doing contractor work or, handyman crap, but this is more of an intellectual systems and training and interviewing and processes. What got you over the hump on this one?
Yeah, well, it definitely wasn't Kara being pissed off. She's super easygoing and always supportive. So it wasn't that, but it was more me. At that point, I was just so frustrated with the level of my involvement. And I was having sellers call me and say they had these houses for sale and they were good deals, but I saw buying another house as just having another tenant to deal with. It just seemed like adding headaches. Yeah. And so I knew I had to, sooner or later I had to hire somebody for that role. Something had to change, but I really didn't know how to do it. I didn't want somebody just, structure of the business wise. I didn't want somebody working set hours in a physical office that I had to oversee. I wanted somebody who could work independently, do their job when it was convenient for them and just get the tasks done. And I wasn't sure how to do that until I heard one of your podcasts. I was listening to one of your podcasts and you explained how you hired your first assistant.
The Hamilton effect.
Yeah. And it was like a light bulb. I was like, that's simple. I can do that. And I posted the job and hired the assistant maybe a week later. And she has been awesome. She is so good at what she does. And she really enjoys doing the things that I don't enjoy. And it's really a good match.
I need to, when I'm writing my class right now for Ohio RIA, and that's one thing. It's like you just said, hopefully I won't forget that. It's like she enjoys what you don't enjoy. And that, for me, when I got to that level, was the details. I didn't want to format a lease. I didn't want to make sure every page had the address on it. I just wanted to get the chick in to sign the lease, or the couple to sign the lease and get their money.
Yeah.
But She enjoyed sitting down with them and explaining that they're going to go to hell if they don't pay their rent. And sit down with them and make sure it balances. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot $5. She would not let that slide. She enjoyed the details. So, man, I'm going to put your face in my PowerPoint in Ohio. So if I don't know if you're going to be there on Thursday,
I will be.
Another plug. I'm actually speaking all day, and I'm speaking towards people like you. So, and then I'm speaking on Saturday, which they just told me, which I'm kind of excited, which is going to be totally different material. But I'm going to put that in my slide that I learned that you got to hire the person that's going to get, I don't know if off is the right word, get excited about the stuff that you don't want. And I mean, I can just hear your voice change and the joy. And I'm enamored that you hired her a week later and you have some sort of freedom. And you're still grinding out on the business, right? I mean, you're still on it every day.
Yeah, we're still working on the business, improving systems, improving contractors, but I'm continually handing more off.
Nice.
So,
and how long have you had this gal in your world now?
It's been probably 6 months, I'd say.
And so in that 6 months, tell me what your life has been better, or what have you learned in that 6 months of delegating and letting go?
In that 6 months, let's see. I learned that it's a blessing to offer work.
Yes.
A lot of times I felt guilty trying to give work that I didn't really enjoy to somebody else.
Ooh,
and then,
come on.
Yeah. And she really likes it, and it's a blessing to her and benefits her and her family. And
Nice.
Really, the more I can do that, the better it is.
Or more people. Scale.
Right, exactly.
People don't want to lock up a house on contract, even though you're kind of an introvert personality and kind of like you're real serious all the time. Is it just because when we are interacting, it's just business?
I mean, so, maybe. I got a light side. You'll see it. No worries. I know.
Well, even we hung out in Nashville. You were all serious.
Right. That's true.
It is. I mean, like, I'm trying to, this guy's a missionary. I can just envision you standing on stage. Yeah, I need $5 a month to help me. I'm trying to articulate in my mind, how did you raise $500,000 for 4 years? And I know you're very intelligent and super savvy in so many ways. Your personality is just like the go-to get it done. And you're like, bombs will be going off and you're just calm.
That's true.
I mean, you're like, yeah, Karen, no big deal. You're like,
my personality is laid back.
Yeah, laid back would be the better term. It's not a negative. I just, I get all amped up. Like, I just found out a bunch of crap on one of my properties, and I'm fixed to do a podcast on it of just drama. But so you've been set free in essence for the 6 months. So you've tasted the nectar of life, of freedom, by delegating and letting go. How did you handle the money part of just saying, I need to pay it forward? Or, I mean, I love your perspective on I'm blessing her while she's blessing me. But, you're a detailed spreadsheet guy, right? Kind of, maybe?
Yeah, I like the details and looking into it. I'm always more big picture.
Okay, so big picture. So how did you put the pen to the paper on the money side of allocating the salary or letting go of money? That's a lot of investors that I work with. They can't let go. They're too cheap to hire someone. How did you come to Jesus on that one?
I think I had a different perspective on it. Ever since we started our real estate business, I just always spent money on growth. So before I really needed one, I bought a good website. Before we needed good property management. That's
it. That's all. Stop right there, bro. I bought it, and we needed a website. We bought the best one before we needed it. You were forward thinking, visionary thinking, and willing to take the risk, hopefully that it would return. And 9 times out of 10, I'm assuming that it did. I was wrestling with an investor yesterday, and he was complaining about doing these doing these fans. So he's remodeled this very expensive house, and the realtor, now of course you got to question the realtor, because what's their motive? It's not their money. But the realtor was like, hey man, you probably need to swap out those ceiling fans. They're old brass ceiling fans. And it's just interesting to hear this investor rationalize this spending. And he's a young investor, he's a phenomenal investor. But in my mind, I don't know if he probably didn't take my advice. I hope he did. But I was like, bro, you really are going to have someone question a sale over $500? And I try to walk him through. I'm like, bro, it's $300, $200 for the $300 for the fans, and $200 to put them up. Now, I'd rather spend $500 today, so we're not losing a sale, because in this gal's mind or couple's mind, that the house is outdated. I don't ever want them to lose focus on purchasing my property. I never want to
for
give
something so
them
minor.
the
Yeah.
inclination. Yeah, we can negotiate on the roof, or the carport may be janky, needs to be come down or needs to be shored up, and that's a $5,000 hickey. But anything that's $1,500 or below, you've got to you don't want to. You're going to lose a customer, and you don't want to lose a customer. And you can apply that to private money. I mean, if someone's going to say, I really got to have 8%, and you're offering 6, am I going to? I mean, what is 2%? You really got to put the pen to the paper. You got to look at. I have an opportunity to borrow $100,000 with no credit check and no appraisal. He works with me. He just wants a little bit more money today. Am I going to walk away because I'm prideful on my 6%? I don't know how to articulate it. And I know he listens to the podcast. So, homie, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you. And Chad Harris, who is a baller, says it's so minor.
Yeah, it's in the short term it seems important, but if you look at the long term, getting that investor is much more important than
Come on, man, put that on your slides.
Difference.
Put that on your slides. Write that down.
All right.
Come on, man. You're bringing the word. You're bringing it strong, Big Daddy. I love it. I think we all get caught in the moment. We get caught of a tenant yelling at us, I'm going to sell the property. And, that's why I was working on my slides. And one of my slides was, I couldn't rent this property out. And my first inclination was to sell it, but I knew that neighborhood is up and coming. As a friend of mine said, it's in the path of progress. And I'm looking at the short term. I can't rent it. And then a really good investor like you said, it's minor, but he said, you have a management problem. And that management problem is me and my staff. So you got to look at the big vision. What are we trying to do? We're trying to buy assets that yield a monthly income. If I were to sell that property, which is a good property, I just was looking at the short term of pain. So short-term pain.
There it is.
Okay. All right. So let's wrap this up, man. This has been a phenomenal interview. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that you would invest with Chad somehow. Like, just call him if you're in Dayton, Ohio. If you come to the Ohio area, we're going to be hugged up, snugged up, hip to hip. You can find me. I'm going to be running around like a crazy chicken next to him, and I would love to introduce you to Chad Harris. He is on the Savvy team for life. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that to everybody. I believe in his vision and his direction. And Chad has brought so much to my world. Just that one small principle, thinking bigger, and just what Chad has endured as a human being, just the sacrifices, and just a phenomenal heart. And we need more men like that in our world. So Chad, leave us with a couple of nuggets here. Lead us with, I'm going to throw these all out, and then I'll remind you of them. Like, what books, kind of helped you through these times? You said you read a lot of books, listen to a lot of podcasts. Bigger Pockets is one. What books, obviously the Savvy Landlord, we know that.
Obviously, definitely.
Obviously, we wouldn't be on the show. People don't read, so, anyway, I'm finally on Audible. But is there a book that stood out to you at all during this process?
Man, I've read so many books. Probably the first Kiyosaki book I read, I got a audio version of Cash Flow Quadrant when I was in Kenya.
Nice.
And I loved that. It really changed my thinking about what a business was. I love The One Thing. That really, I'm kind of divergent thinking, and I can run with 10 ideas all over the place. that helped me narrow it down and focus on one thing. I love the idea of the domino effect, that if you can knock over that biggest first domino, it'll topple over everything else.
Ooh, that's in the One Thing book.
Yes.
Confession, I dogged that book, and but you just opened that wound of VanCauwenbergh short thinking, of just judgmental. I'm like, the one thing, I read the first 2 chapters and I was like, okay, guy, I got it. The one thing, got it. What's the one thing I can do today? What's the one thing I can do to move my goal? I get it. But I didn't think about the big domino effect. If you crush that big one thing, all these other derivatives will be successful because of that. Right?
Yeah, that's it.
I'm going to read that book. Okay. And of course, the people that have referred that book to me, I was always like, don't tell me about that book. But okay.
All right, so sorry to open the wound.
No, it's okay. We'll leave the books alone. All right, tell me what's next for Chad, or your goals. Do you tell me you still have a heart for missions? Are you going to be in the missions field again, or donating? I know you were raising money, maybe. And then what's next for you?
We're always involved in missions in one way or another. So even since we started our business, a portion of the rent from every house goes towards the work in Kenya.
Cool.
And we've supported ministry at our church and sponsored a 5K that goes towards the ministry. And now we're trying to help short-term people raise money so they can go on short-term trips just for a week or two to the mission field. Awesome. And I hope we'll continue to build our assets, build our business bigger, so that we can have a bigger impact overseas. I want to have a bigger involvement in Swaziland, a bigger involvement in Kenya, and really just leverage the assets that we have to be able to make a difference, to be able to impact people. And and that's true for the business here as well. When I looked at my purpose, and my purpose isn't really in buying real estate. I'm good at buying real estate, but my purpose is more in encouraging others, teaching others. And so I really have a heart for helping other people succeed, overcome those obstacles that they see as a struggle. And so I'm going to continue with courses and teaching and trying to just offer information and help people to start investing or build their business. I really love your serving attitude, Stephen. I've always felt blessed by it and our interactions, and I'm glad to be a part of it, glad to help others in any way I can, and I really feel energized through it.
Dude, I'm in. So ladies and gentlemen, Chad is an up-and-coming coach in our little organization of whatever God has for True Wealth Investors. That's his organization. Is that right? Can they go to your website?
They can find True Wealth Investors on Facebook currently, or our website will be up in about a week.
Okay. Well, he'll have flyers at the Ohio RIA, and you got to make sure you get to know Chad. And, if you do want some coaching at any level, you can Facebook me or Facebook Chad, and we'll get you geared up. We'll find someone that can walk you through the process and not go alone in this dark place. And Chad, it's a blessing to know you, and I'm excited to see what goes on. I get to see you in October 30th in Ohio RIA, and I'm like, I feel like I'm working for Vina Cox over here, Jones. Like, I'm promoting the Ohio Convention. And if you don't know that, go Google up Ohio RIA Convention. I'm fortunate to speak there. Chad will be speaking there someday soon. I speak that forward. Vina, I know you don't listen to my stuff, but somebody does. So you can let Vina know that Chad Harris is on the scene. And also Kurt Phillips, too. These men that are making an impact in their community and also overseas. Pretty baller in my mind. Well, Chad, I appreciate the time, and I'll have you on the show many, many times.
Appreciate it, Stephen. Thank you.
What is the Savvy Boot Camp? Are you struggling to get to the next level as a business owner, as an investor? Do you want to multiply your income? Sign up for the Savvy Boot Camp, a strategic and supercharged one-night and one-day event designed to shortcut your learning process and propel you forward. Just value, no upsells, and an intimate setting to build relationships with like-minded investors. We will be covering how personality profiling can make you a millionaire, outsourcing and the nitty-gritty of maximizing your property management, scaling your business through systems and automation, technology hacks you should be using every day, and how to raise private money. Go to www.savvybootcamp.com now to register or to find out more.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at savvyradioshow.com. Connect on Twitter at LandlordBook and always be buying assets.